Hello and welcome to another live Third Apron podcast. I'm your host, Yossi, NBA salary cap analyst, and Sam and I are going to conclude the offseason rankings. We did the top 20 teams. Now we're going to do Sam's bottom 20, and that he will take the reins. That is all coming up.
Yossi, third time's a charm. Can we get through an introduction without an interruption, without a technical mistake? Can we just do this cleanly? So far, so good. Yossi Goslin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just trying to provide. I know the people are hungry for content in August. It's hard to get it, so I'm trying to provide as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm now at the point in the offseason where I'm very close to out of news to digest. So there's a lot of big picture stuff, a lot of my weirder ideas. I'm working on some stuff that I'm going to publish in the next couple of weeks. It's kind of just like you can tell this was written in August, but that's the time of year that we're at. Fortunately, here on the Third Apron podcast, we still have 10 teams to cover as far as their offseason grades. As you'll recall from part 2, I think I maybe gave 24 out of the 30 NBA teams a C minus. So we are going to start by working through the last of the C minus groups, and then we will get down to the D's. So these are my bottom 10 teams in my offseason grades, again, with some overlap because there were so many C minuses. Some of them are covered in the last episode. Some of them will cover now. So we're going to start with the first of today's C minuses, the Phoenix Suns, who I actually want to praise for giving out some of my favorite contracts of the entire offseason. Colin Gillespie, 4 years, $48 million is a steal. If he stays healthy, that is a great contract. There are a lot of teams that we have not talked about yet that we will talk about today who I think should have signed Colin Gillespie to a bigger contract than this, as opposed to the things that they did. I think, like, most notably, I'm thinking about the Bucks giving Gary Trent that ridiculous 4 years, 64 million, whatever it was. Colin Gillespie is just way better than Gary Trent and is getting significantly less than him. Jordan Goodwin, 3 years, 19 million. Very, very nice contract for a solid bench guard. Mark Williams, 3 for 38. I mean, the injury risk, it's always going to be persistent there, but he's a good, solid rotation center at that price. That's totally feasible. Unfortunately, the Suns also made what I think to be the most inexplicable trade of the entire offseason, giving up their unprotected 2033 first round pick and Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, who I know that they are considering a cap dump in this trade, for Miles Bridges, when Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal are maybe like close to as valuable as Miles Bridges is, maybe more valuable depending on the team context. I don't understand this at all. Giving up an unprotected pick 7 years in the future when you are a play-in team with no championship equity whatsoever is just insane. I can think of no way to rationalize this. Miles Bridges has always been a better theoretical player than an actual player. Like, I know he puts points on the board. He has never been the defender he should be given his physical tools. The three-point shooting has always been very, very inconsistent. He does not put as much pressure on the rim as you would think he would. When you look at the on-off splits for like how well he played when LaMelo Ball was on the floor versus when LaMelo Ball was not on the floor, it is a pretty substantial difference. He was far worse without LaMelo. I know the Suns have other good offensive players, most notably Devin Booker. They do not have a playmaker remotely at LaMelo Ball's level. I do not get this trade at all. This makes no sense to me. If they had not given out the good contracts that they gave out, I probably would have had the Suns among the worst teams in the entire offseason. As it was, this is still negative. Yossi, what say you?
I think they're among the probably bottom 3 offseason. I'm a little lower on the contracts in general, but as far as the Miles Bridges trade, it was kind of predictable in the sense that I had a feeling that they're going to try again to trade their 2033 first round pick for some type of upgrade and try to balance it out with some type of pick swap, because that 33 first round pick is far more valuable than Miles Bridges. They knew it. And so it's like, what are you getting for that 2033 first round pick? You're getting Miles Bridges, who they seem to value quite a bit. You're getting off Grayson Allen, who has an additional year at 19 million. You're getting off Royce O'Neal, who has an additional year at 11 million. I think it's still, and I think they probably needed like some crappy first round pick on top of that to kind of get even. I think I'd rather just have the 2033 first round pick and try to figure out and just kind of like roll with whatever you got, because I don't think Miles Bridges is going to make the Suns as meaningfully better as they're expecting. As far as the contracts, I'll start from the ones I like the most. I like the Luke Kennard one, just very easy 2-year deal, player option. He got a lot he got a little less than I expected at that tax mid level. So I think that would be good value. And they have enough guard depth where they don't have to depend on him to play. But in my book, he's the greatest statistics 3-point shooter in NBA history. It's like him and Mark Price. Mark Price is higher, but Kennard took like way more. So
Well, yeah, but he
good.
doesn't take enough. Like, he takes more than Mark Price, who played in the 80s. But, like, the whole Luke Kennard thing is that he only shoots when he's wide open. Like, every team that has Luke Kennard goes through the dance where they have him for the first month.
Sorry, not Mark
like,
Price. Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr.
Okay, well, Steve Kerr played in the 90s. It's the same thing. And also, Steve Kerr played when they shortened the line. This is a separate interest of mine, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. We don't talk enough about the statistical insanity from 1995 through 1997 when they shortened the three-point line, so it was the same length all the way around as it is in the corner. Some of the numbers from that era are just utterly insane, and I encourage people to go back and look at them. Steve Kerr, I think in that period, shot like 49% from three, something insane. But anyway, Luke Kennard, the whole thing with Luke Kennard is that you get him and you're so excited because he makes every three. And then as you have him, you slowly realize doesn't take nearly enough of them considering how good he is. Like, he should be firing them away, and he just really doesn't. But I do agree. It's a totally fine contract for a fourth guard.
Then the Mark Williams contract, I'm not a big fan of him as like the guy I wanted like as a significant part of my rotation, but that contract came out a lot lower than I anticipated. I thought he would get a good amount more than this. So to get him locked in for this for 3 years, no options, even if he tops out as like an average backup big, like I think that is fine money. He's making a little less than like most of the big men that got whatever they got, the free agent big men got paid this year. Like he's making less than Mitch, Robert Williams, Jock Landale. Then we got Jordan Goodwin, who it should be fine. And then Gillespie, like ultimately the Suns, they did this with Grayson Allen, they did this with Royce O'Neal. There's probably a couple other players. They are like the team that like is happy to play role players. Like you come in for a year, you play really well, you pay the guy, and like I think that's just the hope is that it's just like a neutral. Like I don't anticipate these guys playing so well that they can get like a first round pick or like a really good first round pick for these guys. So I think like what you're hoping for is that they can just they're serviceable, and the more years you put on it, the more risk I think there is that maybe something goes wrong later and you get yourself like a Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen type situation. Granted, those guys their contracts were definitely a little higher. Other than that, but the Miles Bridges one, that just for a team they already lacked so many assets, it couldn't really do anything. For that to be the bullet that you fire for Miles Bridges, that alone should put them at the bottom. They're going to be a big tax team, which, okay, great. They're still willing to pay the tax for this team. And we're still waiting to see also what the extensions look like for Miles Bridges, for Dylan Brooks. I have a hard time seeing that really improving their spot. I feel like it might only hurt them depending on how those come out to be.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, do you think teams are having meetings right now? Like maybe Oklahoma City or San Antonio, like the forward-thinking teams. Do you think they're having meetings like, okay, we have 2 years until Phoenix is 2035 on locks. What's our plan?
You brought this up jokingly a couple weeks ago, and yes, 100%. There are teams thinking, already plotting, how are we going to get that 2035 first round pick?
Am I recycling jokes? I feel bad. Yeah, it's just a matter of where you are as an organization, because trading that 2033 first round pick, like that's something that you are going to need to rebuild in a few years when this version of the team that already is not championship caliber really starts to go belly up, when Dylan Brooks starts to get older, when Miles Bridges starts to get older, when you can't cycle in new talent because you don't have first round picks to get those guys with, or if you do, there are 5 swaps on top of them. Like, I think the Wizards control a couple of their picks. Obviously, they owe a few to Houston. I don't know what the exact chain of custody is on all of those picks, but like they're either not going to pick or they're going to pick in the 20s through 2033, except for 2032, which is currently frozen. The other part of this is you mentioned that they're in the tax. I find it kind of notable that they gave up that 2033 pick and didn't even get out of the tax with it. Now, there's not an obvious way for them to get out of the tax, I guess, except for maybe finding a Jalen Green trade. I don't know that there was a Jalen Green trade out there. I don't know who would really want him at that price. I also think Colin Gillespie should be starting over him. It's going to take them 30, 40 games to figure that out, but they will. And then Jalen Green will pick up his player option next offseason. It's just low upside here. If you're going to trade your pick 7 years in the future, I think there are times where it makes sense. But if you're going to trade your pick 7 years in the future, it better be because you have championship upside here and now. And the Suns are just, they're not even in that galaxy.
Yeah, all the teams that traded picks in the 2030s, the Raptors, the Heat, there's another team I'm blanking on.
Minnesota.
I mean, the Lakers sort of, but yeah, Minnesota's the other one. Like they all, I think, like they can all make a case that they possibly raised their championship ceiling with those moves. There's some risk involved, but still, like they probably have a better chance of winning a title now than they did before making those trades. The Suns didn't. I don't think they necessarily even improved their chance at getting out of the play-in. And they had the money issue, the money thing. The Miles Bridges trade basically put them back into the tax because they were like that and the Luke Kennard signing. So they could get out of it later if things aren't going quite as well. Maybe they want to trade Jalen Green for someone making a lot less. That's probably the path in the trade deadline in case and maybe they could get an upgrade at point guard that way.
Colin Gillespie is the upgraded point guard. I just think you're underrating him. He's very good. Anyway, that's enough on Phoenix. The Denver Nuggets are next C-. I feel weird grading the Nuggets because their offseason basically hasn't happened yet. I mean, they get Spencer Jones back at 2 years, $12 million, which I think is a totally reasonable contract for Spencer Jones. I agreed with them matching it. They signed Marvin Bagley, but everything here hinges on what happens with Peyton Watson. They have reportedly offered him a contract that I find pitiful, which is 5 years, $70 million. I think he is worth almost twice that. He is asking for something in the range, I believe, of 5 years, $125 million. We've seen $25 million a year as the average that he has been reportedly asking for. If they get him for the qualifying offer, this is a successful offseason. If they get him for, like a reasonable contract, not 5 for 70 because that's a joke, but I don't know, 5 for 90, something like that, I'll still chalk that up probably as a win, depending on what else they do. If they get him back on a reasonable contract and use that as an excuse to dump Cam Johnson, I feel a lot worse about them. If they sign and trade him without getting a good player back, I feel a lot worse about them. I don't know how much championship equity Denver really has, but I think any of it revolves around A, keeping last year's team together, and B, hoping that jump Peyton Watson made from late November to late January is real. If you pull any of the key pieces off of last year's team, considering the depth that they lost, they lose Tim Hardaway Jr., who was, I think, a 6 Man of the Year finalist. Either that or he was just really, really essential to them. They've lost a ton of depth. If they don't keep the core 6 from last year, I do not view them as a viable championship contender. So I kind of split the difference at C-. Where are you, Yossi?
Well, first off, great past 6 months to Spencer Jones from getting converted to the regular season roster and not accepting a hinky special to getting this deal where he's going to make more money in 2 years guaranteed and a faster path to unrestricted free agency. Just good work by him. And I think like the Nuggets, I don't know how much credit to give them for matching it, though I'd love to know what maybe they could have done to maybe got him at a lower rate for more years, if that was even a possibility. As far as like the smaller stuff, the Bagley on a minimum is fine. Tyus Jones on a minimum. There's like few veteran minimums that just jump out to me. Like, how do you mess up a veteran minimum? I think that might be one of them. And other than that, they're just kind of playing the waiting game. So 2 things. Let me ask you this. What do you think ends up happening? What do you think Watson ends up deciding to do?
I think he eventually takes the qualifying offer. I know that that's like very few guys actually do that. I think Peyton Watson understands just by virtue of the position he plays and the physical profile that he has, unless he gets seriously hurt, he goes into next year like any offer Denver has made, if it really is 5 for 70, for example, like I don't see any world in which Peyton Watson doesn't get offered the full mid-level next year as the floor. I just don't think that he's going to take something as low as Denver has offered. And I don't think Denver is going to push their offer that much further because they understand how much leverage they have here. Because even if he does take the qualifying offer, that doesn't hurt them. Obviously, it helps them keep their tax bill like relatively low. And I say relatively low because we're talking about like a $350 million total payroll versus like a $475 million total payroll, depending on where the Peyton Watson contract comes in. But they don't have to be quite as fearful of losing him next offseason as they are this giant tax bill now, because Cam Johnson expires. So maybe in a year, you let Cam Johnson go and you just pay Peyton Watson to be the long-term starter in Cam's place. Does that make your team worse? Yes, but I'm being realistic. They're not going to pay all six of these guys fair market value. But if you can get Peyton Watson back on a discount this year, you can at least hopefully contend for a championship here and now. I think their goal is frankly to get him on the qualifying offer. They have to know he's not going to sign for 5 years, 70 million. I don't think that's remotely close. And I think at that point, given how desirable wings like him are, it just makes the most sense for him to say, fine, I'll play it out knowing that I probably have a mid-level floor next year and hopefully have a much higher ceiling. And if I have to leave to get that money, I have to leave to get that money.
So I don't think he's going to take the qualifying offer. I think most likely they split the difference down the middle. I think the Nuggets would love to get him on 5 for 90. I'm thinking maybe like, if it's 18 million a year, so like that on a 3-year deal with a player option on the 3rd year. Because if he's going to take a lower AAV than he feels comfortable with, he'll want the years short. So at least like 2 more years, and then they can renegotiate his deal, restructure it in 2 years. I kind of get the feeling it'll end up being something like that. So the Nuggets can still figure something out to get under the second apron later, and it's just such a big difference, 8 million versus 18 million, 54 million guaranteed. So I would consider that like okay, because I think if you're the Nuggets, you probably want him on like a 4-year guaranteed deal. That would like, I'd give him more credit for that. So then the other thing is there remains a long-term element of who from the starting core is going to be long for this roster. I'm talking about Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, and Christian Brown. Seems like something will change within the next 6 to 12 months as far as who's there. So they haven't done anything yet, but is it possible that they are losing value, or maybe they should probably like act earlier on one of these guys, not just for the money savings, but just to get something or to get a certain type of player who might be available now that can help them and get a little younger?
I mean, it depends on who that player is, right? Like Ryan Rollins is a name that I've seen thrown around in a Peyton Watson sign and trade. If you could get Ryan Rollins, who's making $4 million this year, look, you're banking a lot on Aaron Gordon's health at that point, because a lot of the appeal with Peyton Watson is that he can do a lot of the Aaron Gordon things and he's younger, so that you theoretically, if Aaron Gordon gets hurt, you can just upscale on Peyton Watson. Ryan Rollins gives them ball handling that they need, and he can actually credibly defend. I got to tell you, most of the Peyton Watson ideas I've seen thrown around, I just don't really like. I mean, like, what is the real value to them in getting a first round pick a few years down the line when they have no matching salary to trade it with? Like, if they were to get a first round pick for Peyton Watson, my honest belief is that they might just use that pick to dump Zeke Naji, or like dump some other contract down the line, Christian Brown down the line, maybe. Like, I kind of don't trust this organization to get that situation right. I think the best case outcome for them organizationally is Peyton Watson taking the qualifying offer and having one more year with this top 6 together before you have to settle it, and Cam Johnson probably leaves in free agency. I think if somebody is gone before the beginning of the season, Cam Johnson is probably the likeliest outcome. So let me ask you this. What do you think the best case scenario for Denver would be?
For Peyton Watson?
The whole, like, whether it's the Peyton Watson contract and like, realistically, what do you think? Like, if they re-sign Peyton Watson for something like 18 to 20 a year, do you think like their best case is dumping Cam Johnson? Do you think there's a deal for Christian Brown out there? Like, where is the version of this that makes sense?
Probably you gotta get Watson back first, see how he looks with Gordon, and go from there. But at the same time, even if that because they haven't. I don't think they really got to play together because like they just had injuries conflicting with one another. I just also think like as I look at this roster, that I feel like Aaron Gordon is like the act first guy they should look at. Obviously, if there was someone who would just take Christian Brown and give him like a player making half as much, that would solve a lot of their issues. But that doesn't solve the lingering long term issue that just how good are Murray and Gordon and Cam Johnson going to be over the remainder of their contracts. So I'm just really, I have a lot of doubts at how good this team's going to be. I was really high on them heading into the playoffs. After seeing how they lost to the Wolves, that completely changed my opinion on their ceiling moving forward. And I just feel like something's going to have to change. I just don't know what exactly that is and what's realistically out there because I don't think their starters have like all that much great value. So, and they don't have draft picks to trade. So this is why I always say the Nuggets are in the worst, I think, in the worst situation this offseason. They're the one team I would want to manage the least if I had to pick a team to manage this offseason. And it's shown just based on their inactivity.
Well, there's an elephant in the room that we have to address here, which is that everybody expected Nikola Jokic to extend this offseason, and he obviously is not. He has, I think, 359 million reasons not to do it. If he waits till next summer, he can get that extra year, and then I believe that would keep him under contract through his age 37 season. It would give him the biggest contract in NBA history. I also wonder how much of Nikola Jokic's decision not to extend is based on applying a little bit of pressure, let's say, to the Nuggets to not cheap out on this roster. And if I were Nikola Jokic, that's what I would be doing. I'm not saying Nikola Jokic should demand a trade or he should leave as a free agent next offseason. I am saying if I were Nikola Jokic, I would go to the Nuggets and I would kind of say, you know, I've generated a lot of surplus value for this organization. I have been underpaid every single year of my entire career. I have easily generated 100 million plus in surplus value on my contracts alone. And that does not even account for the franchise valuation boom that I have played a part in here in Denver. I expect you to have the $400 million payroll. And if you want me to resign, I want you to have the $400 million payroll and keep everybody. That is the pressure I would be applying if I'm Nikola Jokic. I don't know if he actually is, but the fact that he has not signed this extension does indicate that he's like putting a little bit of fear into the Nuggets. And there's been some reporting out there throughout this offseason that like the Nuggets aren't operating with the restraint that maybe we think they are. Now, that also could just be posturing. If I were the Nuggets and I wanted to scare off Peyton Watson suitors, that's the kind of messaging that I would be putting out there. And they did succeed in that there is no cap space left. There is nobody left who can give Peyton Watson an offer sheet that scares them. They control this whole situation now. It's either a sign and trade or he will be back on the team in some capacity. Yeah. But we do have to acknowledge that there is the possibility that Nikola Jokic becomes a free agent and leaves next offseason. It is not likely, but if he were any other player going into a walk year, yeah, we'd be concerned.
I think that they probably, if I had to guess right now what's going to happen with the Nuggets, I think they will get Peyton Watson back at some capacity. They will finish the season over the second apron. So let's say they bring him back like at 18 million, you're at like 400 something million. Maybe they figure out some type of trade at the deadline that could reduce it, but it's not going to reduce it by that much. I think they'll end up biting the bullet this year as a way to also like to illustrate to Jokic, hey, like we're trying here. We're not going to let this roster get worse. Although I gotta wonder if the roster is worse by the subtraction of some of their role player. It's mainly Tim Hardaway Jr. So I don't know. I think they're about the same as last year.
Well, also you have to worry about aging and injuries, right? Like Aaron Gordon now has 2 straight years where muscle injuries have been a big problem. I don't know what you can rely on him for. What version of Christian Brown is the real version? The guy from 2 years ago where he got the 5-year, $125 million contract, or the guy from last year who was just way, way worse? I don't quite know. And we're going to have to see that play out. But like, I think the way we talked about Denver for most of last season was that they were on the level of Oklahoma City and San Antonio. And right now, it's pretty clear to all of us that they're not, or at least they weren't in that Minnesota series. Anyway, that's enough about Denver. My next C- is the Washington Wizards. As you'll recall, I do not assign credit for the lottery. That credit belongs to the lottery gods. So AJ Demancia is not a factor here. The only really notable things they've done are trade for DeAndre Ayton, which does not really make sense for me. I don't know why you'd really want DeAndre Ayton on a young team like this, and give Trae Young a 4-year, $212 million contract. That is the max another team could have given him. As you'll recall, the Atlanta Hawks traded Trae Young and took on Corey Kispert's contract because they were afraid of having Trae Young at the max for 1 year on a player option. And the Wizards eagerly gave him 4. That is about as stark a disparity in how two teams have evaluated a single player as I ever remember in NBA history. I think this contract is bad. I am worried that they're going to give Anthony Davis a regrettable extension. As we are recording this, it is August 4th. That will come up on August 6th when he becomes eligible. We will see. I'm sure if that happens, we will record something else. But for now, we're evaluating mostly on the basis of the Trae Young contract, which is among the very worst contracts in the NBA. Do you agree?
I agree. I was saying that if there was maybe some understanding of what his contract would be when they acquired him, and that changed based on maybe there was a max offer out there, which maybe there was, then I probably would not have matched it if that's what happened. I'm starting to think that this ended up being something that was kind of understood when they acquired him. And yeah, I'm kind of worried if there is some form of an understanding with Anthony Davis of what he is, what he wants to be bought in with the Wizards. Seems like they are really intent on having him play at least, a year or two with them. So we'll see what that does. But it's just like, for a team that, if they extend AD, for a team that like successfully got out of the John Wall and Bradley Beal's supermaxes to then go to, I guess you can argue like it might be a better players to max out. You're just kind of risking yourself getting into the same type of position you were with those players towards the end. So we'll see what happens. It's August 4th as of recording. With DeAndre Ayton, I was actually thinking about this because he opted in, which suggests maybe there wasn't any offers for the $8 million that he had. But the Wizards happily kind of traded for him, and they could have even just signed him outright. They had enough tax room to do it. So I wonder if maybe he wasn't interested in being a Wizard, or I don't know, because they gave up 2 seconds to pay him $8 million.
They also had to get off of Jaden Hardy. I don't think they have enough tax room to have paid Hardy what they're paying him. Oh, they do? Oh, well then.
Yeah. They would have been like really tight. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Here's probably what it is. The Lakers didn't know if they were getting Walker Kessler until after free agency started, because they obviously had to negotiate that sign and trade. And part of the motivation for the Lakers in making that trade, which we'll get to the Lakers in a little bit, was that they had to shed just a little bit of money. I think it was a little bit over $1 million to fit Walker Kessler, Sandro Mamukelashvili, and Quentin Grimes under their cap. So maybe the reason Ayton opted in was that there wasn't free agent interest in him, but the Wizards after the fact, or the Lakers after the fact, seeing that they needed that money, approached the Wizards and said, yeah, all right, like, let's do this. Maybe it was something like that.
Worked out for the Lakers.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to the Lakers. I'm not crazy about that move for them either, but it's an entirely different set of circumstances. The Wizards are not acting like a team that just won the lottery, right? Like, when they traded for Trae Young and they traded for Anthony Davis in the middle of the season, they didn't know where they were going to be picking. They did presumably know that lottery reform was coming and that they weren't going to be able to keep tanking. And even if they did, the 2027 and 2028 drafts were bad enough that if they didn't get a star in 2026, they were kind of screwed as far as this rebuild went. So getting Trae Young and Anthony Davis was kind of a hedge. It was a way for them to say, if the lottery doesn't work out, we can at least try to build something in the short term with Trae Young and Anthony Davis that's like a little respectable. Once you get AJ Dybantsa, your entire organizational plan should revolve around AJ Dybantsa. Paying max contracts to Trae Young and Anthony Davis is not maximizing AJ Dybantsa, right? Like, Trae Young is somebody who needs to have the ball in his hands a lot. I know there are going to be talks about like, oh, he can be off the ball more. He's a great shooter. Spoiler alert, no, he's not, or at least statistically he's not. Oh, he's moving off the ball more now. Okay, it's more than very, very little. Like, I don't see a world in which, like, it makes sense for Trae Young to have the ball as much as Trae Young needs to have the ball to maximize his value. Like, to get max value out of Trae Young, he needs to run 40 pick and rolls every game. On a team with AJ DeBanza developing and a lot of other young guys developing, I don't think it makes sense for Trae Young to run the 40 pick and rolls a game that he needs to run. And if he's not, you're not getting enough value out of him because he's so bad defensively, because he does so little off of the ball. You've just kind of saddled yourself with a contract that you're not maximizing based on the strategy of how you're running your team. Anthony Davis, it's a much simpler calculation. It's just, he is 33. He is very injury prone. He is starting to decline. Do you want to be paying him if you do extend him into his mid to late 30s? I don't think so. I think his contract as it stands right now, which is 2 years for $120 million, is already a negative. If you're talking about extending that, tacking more years, more money onto it, that's just going to get worse. But again, we're not grading them based on an Anthony Davis extension because it hasn't happened yet. I just think, I don't understand. I guess with Trae Young, at least he could have been a free agent this offseason, and you did risk losing him for nothing, when I think there was some value in having him on the team next year. But 4 years at the max is just, it's not worth that. Like, I think you wanted to have Trae Young as sort of a babysitter for the young guys, like a way to like organize the offense for them so they're not just totally having to figure it out on their own. A 4-year max is not worth that. There are just way cheaper point guards you could have gotten to do that for. Physically, I think he's taken a step back with the injuries. I don't know, man. Like, we're in agreement here. This is a weird and bad contract.
Yeah, some downside for this ranking to go lower depending on what happens with AD. And I just feel like they'll be in the mix for a playing spot, but when you're looking at some of the teams, it's really hard to gauge who's going to be at the bottom mix. But let's say like Atlanta, Cleveland, some teams I'm not like super high on based on how the offseason has gone around the league. I still feel like those teams have more continuity, but also like I think the players that they have gel a little better. With the Wizards, there's a lot more questions as far as like how their best 5-man unit will function. So I'll need to see it. But yeah, overall, definitely on the lower end.
Yeah, they have very little shooting on this team now, and I feel like nobody's addressing that at all. But we'll see. We'll talk about them more when we have more clarity on the Anthony Davis situation. The next C-, this would be, we have 2 C- left. Our next C- is the Los Angeles Lakers. They did get better, I think, or at least, I don't know if I want to say better. They stayed roughly in the same realm that they were in before, but they got substantially younger. So there is something to that. Like, they are not a LeBron James team anymore. They're not going to have to do this dance every year where they wonder if the guy in his 40s is going to be as good as he was last year and if he's going to come back. But I think they capped themselves at a sub-championship ceiling by adding Walker Kessler, Quentin Grimes, Sandro Mamukelashvili, and Colin Sexton as their 4 like resource free agents. They also had Zaire Williams and Matisse Thybulle as minimum guys, and I think those are good minimum signings. But they came into this offseason with 2 primary sets of resources. It was max cap space, and it was 3 first-round picks to trade and 3 swaps. I guess they used one of those first-round picks, Cameron Carr, so 2 picks and 3 swaps. They use both their cap space and their picks to trade on Walker Kessler, which leaves them without one of those resources to spend on defensively minded wings. You need to have both. You can't just have minimum salary wings as your primary defensive guys. Look at how high the bar is for championship level wings around the league. The Knicks had OG Anunoby, they had Josh Hart, they had Mikal Bridges. The Thunder had a million of those guys. Celtics had Tatum and Brown and Drew Holiday. I don't think you can get away with minimum salary wings, and I don't think you can get away with like a 2032 swap for Jonathan Kuminga, let's say. I think you need to have premium wings to win a championship in the NBA, and I don't think they have the resources anymore to get those guys. Right now, I think they are in a tier with the Nuggets, Rockets, and Timberwolves as the Western Conference playoff teams who are not the Thunder or the Spurs, and I don't think they have a ceiling that is capable of beating the Thunder or the Spurs. Given everything they paid, I think they had to make that ceiling, and they didn't. So I gave the Lakers a C-. Where are you at?
So I want to talk about the Walker Kessler move because they did need him, and there is a very small likelihood where, not likelihood, but like there is like some world where the Lakers maybe make a really deep playoff run, like just the addition of Kessler, if he's healthy, brings enough rim protection and all that, where with Luka and Reeves, they could maybe go advance a couple of rounds, maybe beat one of the Thunder Spurs. I don't think it's that likely, but I think there is some sort of a chance. With all that said, I I wonder if they could have potentially sent less stuff to the Jazz if they maybe were a little more patient in the restricted free agency process. Because keep in mind, they could have made him a big offer sheet, and they probably wouldn't have wanted to do that until like the end of the moratorium period, because then you're kind of giving the Jazz like a lot more time to think about matching it. I don't know if the Jazz would have matched it. I kind of think like if it was like a 2-year max or something like that, they probably would and try to figure it out later. But it just feels like, do you think the Jazz would have accepted fewer picks if the Lakers dragged this out a little bit?
I mean, maybe you could have kept one more swap. I think it was at least going to be the 2 picks and more than that.
But it's a big difference.
Yeah, it is a pretty significant difference. I'm not dismissing that. But yeah, I think the Jazz just played this right, and they sent every indication that they were going to match any offer sheet. I've said this on the show before. I would have just did 4-year max. I dare you to match, Utah. I would rather have Walker Kessler on a bad contract than have Walker Kessler on the contract that he's on and have spent all of my picks. If I have my picks, I feel like I can figure the other stuff out later. I'd rather just take the chance, take the plunge, knowing that if I didn't get him, I could then redirect my cap space to Peyton Watson, perhaps, or some of the other restricted free agents. I just think they acted a little bit rashly. I think they were so desperate for a center that they got tunnel vision, and they just said, we have to get the center no matter what. We'll figure the other stuff out later, whereas I just would not have done that. I just think they overpaid. We should also talk about the players that they signed.
Well, so hold on. So we're going to get into that, but I want to transition into this because I think it really matters that they should understand if they were resigned to the idea that they were going to give up some draft equity or like a good amount to get him, and especially on this contract that allowed him to do other stuff later. But like for them to just accept that, I'm sure the Jazz just said, hey, like this is what we'll do for a sign and trade for them, because the Lakers accepted it on day one. So it makes a big difference for a team that has no first round picks left to trade, only one swap. Like if you could have just done the first 2 first round picks, I'd still view it as like a negative value move, but at least you preserve more stuff. Now, maybe they did negotiate a little bit more. Maybe they, in the negotiation, preserved one of those, that 2032 first round pick swap. Who knows? But I would have drafted it out a little more, because what did this getting him on this contract do? It gave him the room to sign Quentin Grimes and Sandro Mamukelashvili to these contracts, like roughly 13, 14 million a year for both guys. I'm looking around the league. What are the comparative deals? What other like role players like them got deals this big and long? Like who? What's the comp right now?
Well, I'll add to this. They also got player options, which is the Pelinka special. I did a bit of research. I think it was 16 of their last 23 contracts included a player option in the last year. The Lakers hand out player options like candy. I don't know who the teams were that were going to give out these contracts. And maybe there were teams, but I would venture to guess that if there were, they would make more sense than the Lakers do for these guys. I like Sandro Mamukelashvili a lot. I think he's a very good offensive player. The Lakers don't need very good offensive players. I don't know what their plan here is. Is he going to be the backup center? Because Kevon Looney can't be. I have a lot of questions about DeAndre Ayton trade for them. I guess that they were so frustrated with him that they decided they couldn't bring him back. But Kevon Looney cannot be your backup center, and I don't think that Mamu should be a backup center. You probably want him playing more 4, but defensively, either way, he's kind of a mess. Colin Sexton, I have always believed there is a good defender in there.
Before we get to hold on. What I'm trying to get at is that you can make the case that these guys may or may not be the right players to go after. What I'm saying is, when you look around the league, role players did not get 4-year deals at the full mid-level ish. Like Rui Hachimura, who left, got a 2-year, $14 million a year contract with a team option. Kristaps Porzingis got 20 million a year, only the first year's guaranteed. Like a lot of like no one got a lot of role players did not get guaranteed money after the first year. So when you're looking around the league, like I just it doesn't I wonder who was offering these contracts. I'd love to know. And it just I think there's a good chance these are going to be negative value deals. And I don't know, maybe the LeBron thing was just done, but I think I would have, if that was still an option, maybe I just run it back with LeBron with that money instead and keep that flexibility open for something else because I just don't really see the upside with these contracts. Most likely, I would guess, based on how the year went, that LeBron was just ready to move on.
All right, let's talk about how the defense isn't good. Like, right, none of these guys really. Let's talk about how the defense isn't good or isn't good enough. Quentin Grimes is like a fine defender. He should not be the best perimeter defender on your team. I have always believed Colin Sexton was capable of good defense. It's never materialized in the NBA. Mamu is not a good defender. Their perimeter defenders are minimum guys. It's Matisse Thybulle and Zaire Williams. I would not have made that bet. Like, I would not be betting my championship stakes on guys making the minimum. And like, maybe they trade their 2032 pick for somebody, or maybe they think Jared Vanderbilt, like, because you have so much offensive firepower, is capable of playing more on this team than he has in the past. It just feels like the Lakers really over-indexed on offense, as they very often tend to, especially shot creation. I look at the Sexton deal among all of them as like, I don't know why you're using your capper mid-level on another ball handler when you have these clear needs. If you like Jonathan Kuminga, say, like, why not wait that out and see if you could use that on him later in the offseason and at least try for a big athletic defensive wing. Maybe you should have used that money to try for another 3-and-D guy. Like, I understand that you want to have extra ball handling around for the 82-game grind for Luka and Austin Reeves, but to spend one of your very precious resources on a ball handler, which is your area of strength, the single thing you have more than anything else, that really strikes me as strange.
Well, there is a cost to Colin Sexton, but like, just to close out with Grimes and Mamu, it just seems like they're paying for what Grimes did like 2 years ago. Had a bit of a drop off last year, and then where Mamu's like a big overreaction, I think, to what he just did last year. But by bringing back Sexton, I actually like, I'm okay with the actual contract more than some of the others. Just a 2-year deal, player option after this. I think Sexton's probably worth a little bit more, but it sounds like it was between him and Marcus Smart, because they could have brought back Marcus Smart with their room mid-level. That's what I'm more curious about. Like, you still have a need for some level of help on perimeter defense. You just let go of your best one. Smart, literally, like, huge part of upsetting the Rockets in the first round. No one thought, like, most people did not think the Lakers were, without Luka, going to beat them. And he played well enough that the Rockets decided to get him at, I think, probably a little undervalued type of contract. So
he got less than Sexton did.
So they chose Sexton over Smart, it seems like, unless Smart just, for whatever reason, maybe decided he was going to move on. And then the minimums, I just want to touch on the minimums. I think that's fine. Like, that's probably the more upside play, that Zaire Williams or Matisse Thybulle, maybe there's a chance Zaire Williams could start. Like, I'm trying to see like where the, I think at the minimum, these are both good signings. But then also, like, we talked about the Kevon Looney signing. That one is, I think that's going to end up being a player where, like, they'll probably look to dump him at the trade deadline, save a little money. I don't even know if he's like a third big. So like with the Nuggets, like, it feels like they screwed up a minimum signing, which is kind of hard to do.
Yeah, the other part of this is they're making such a big bet on Walker Kessler specifically when he's never played in a meaningful NBA game. He's been on a team that's been tanking for 4 years. How confident are you that Walker Kessler is as good as this contract, even regardless of the picks?
I think he probably, actually, I think like the annual value is okay. I was thinking he'd probably get less, but that's mainly because of the injury history. So I think there is some upside for him to like play up to the value and not more. But it would require him being very healthy. And I would guess, just based on how his injury history has been, we'll probably have like a lost season or something like that. Hopefully that's not the case. But I do think, like, as far as identifying the type of big man they needed, I understand it. Like I think it's like as good of an addition that you can get, and it's probably one of the more reasonable contracts that they signed. With that said, I just would say with the asset management, some of these other contracts that they gave out, it feels like a very damaging offseason. And like I've been thinking that this is probably the 30th ranked offseason. And after just going through it right now, and we have a couple more teams to discuss, I still feel pretty confident that this is a 30th ranked offseason.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I didn't quite go that far. As far as the Kessler contract goes, he has the 10th highest AAV among centers in the NBA. The 9 centers ahead of him have all made at least one All-Star team. It's Embiid, Anthony Davis, Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, Bam, Chet Holmgren, Sabonis, Şengün, and Rudy Gobert. Like, you're paying him at the absolute top of the market, and maybe that's worthwhile. He is young. There is more upside. He's never played in a good team. Maybe playing on a good team is going to unlock stuff in his game that we haven't quite seen before, but you're making a franchise-altering bet here. If you get this wrong, if he doesn't stay healthy, if he's not good enough, if he doesn't fit, whatever it is, that's it. That's the end of the Luka Doncic era. You have no other resources. You fired all your bullets. So that's where I don't want to say agree with you as far as them having the worst offseason. I do think they had one of the highest stakes off seasons, right? Like some of the teams that I gave bad grades to, like spoiler, the Pelicans did badly. The Pelicans, there were no stakes because the Pelicans are just kind of nowhere. And I presume they're going to remain nowhere until something unexpected happens. The Lakers were in a position where just by virtue of getting Luka out of nowhere, they had some degree of championship equity. Like they're a real team with real ambitions. And the offseason that they had put a cap on their ceiling when they have a future Hall of Famer at the absolute peak of his powers. And I would feel not great about that. He has 2 years left on his contract. He can become a free agent in 2028. You are far more confident that he's going to extend than I am. I think if they have a very good season, he will. But I think if they lose in the first round, which is certainly on the table, I am not quite as certain about that. So this is going to be something that we're going to have to watch next season.
Yeah, so that's the silver lining for me is that I feel like they somehow probably still did good enough that Luka's gonna extend. I think he probably like admires the effort that they did and the aggressiveness to get reportedly their guy. So as long as he extends, that's kind of like their golden parachute out of things in case things don't work out. I think he's more likely to leave the Lakers via trade versus free agency outright. And I'm sure he'd still preserve enough trade value. So I would predict he does sign his max extension next year. I feel like the Lakers have kind of earned that.
Why? What do you mean kind of earned it? Just by virtue of getting a guy that he wanted to play with? Like
virtue of getting the guy that they wanted and getting him and having this plan and following through with it. I have my issues with the plan. I don't know if players could if they're really viewing it that critically, but I feel like will be satisfactory for him.
I don't think any decisions have been made on this front, to be clear. I think how this season plays out is going to factor into this. And I guess worst case, if they do have to trade him, they'll get more than they gave up for him. I don't know how much.
No, but the Lakers are going to be fine. I think they're still going to be a top 6 team in the West, provided they're healthy. They'll win enough regular season games, and if they're lucky enough, they could still make a deep run. Like I said, I don't like the offseason, but with that said, if things go right, they're healthy enough, a conference finals run would not shock me.
Yeah, they're a good team. It's just the bar for them should be a lot higher. Anyway, enough on the Lakers. On to the next team in the LeBron James sweepstakes, our final C-, the Golden State Warriors. Warriors fans are acting like the sky is falling. Am I the only person who thinks they were smart not to make a stupid trade? It feels like Warriors fans are so obsessed with allowing Stephen Curry to retire with a shred of dignity that they're prepared to do something stupid. Like they'd rather make a bad trade than make no trade whatsoever. The way I look at this, if this were any other point in NBA history, Stephen Curry at 38 would be retiring right about now, and they would be going into an organic rebuild. Where they're at right now is a team that should frankly be rebuilding. They have been very, very good for most of the past 12 seasons. They've won 4 championships. They obviously have not invested as many picks into trading for win now talent as those fans would have liked. And I think there was a time a few years ago where they should have been more aggressive about that stuff. But they were a 37-win team last year, and Stephen Curry missed half of the season. and he is going to turn 39 this year. And Draymond Green is, I believe, 35 or 36. Kristaps Porzingis is a perpetual health question mark. They are not a very good team. There is no trade that they can make that would take them from 37 wins to like any remote possibility of winning a championship. The responsible thing here is to prioritize their future. Now, that doesn't mean trading Stephen Curry. You can't trade Stephen Curry without his consent, and frankly, more than consent, without his like coming to you. You can't approach him about that. But I think the reality is the best thing this team could have done this offseason is probably nothing. I think the best thing for them is to win 35 games, have the best lottery odds, and just slowly accumulate young talent as Stephen Curry eventually ages out. He can be on the team as long as he wants. He can make supermax money as long as he wants. But I think they have passed the point where it makes any sense whatsoever to invest first-round picks into putting a winning team around him. I just think that ship has sailed. I still gave them a C- because they did not get LeBron, who was their main target. I wish they would have done, like maybe some other stuff on the fringes, maybe been a little bit more aggressive with their minimums. The Porzingis contract is fine. I think the Al Horford contract is a little strange, but whatever. It's $6 million. Not going to hurt you. I just look at this as like they were a bad team who did nothing to improve their fortunes in any meaningful way. So I had to grade them out as a negative. But I am mostly on board with the notion of doing nothing. I assume you agree?
I just had Sam Esfandiari on to talk about the Warriors, so it's still very fresh on my mind. And I think I'm with you. I think the Warriors did what they should do. I think Warriors fans would prefer the team goes in one direction or the other a little further, like either invest more around Curry or actually like really start trading some veterans, enter more of a rebuild, get more picks. But as long as Steph is bought in, this is kind of what they have to do. They have to preserve their assets and preserve their cap flexibility, because most likely 2027 free agency, that would be their way to reshape the roster around Curry, get a little younger, kind of go the Lakers route, where the Lakers just kind of put a new team around Luka. So they just ran it back, which is definitely not appealing, because the Warriors, I believe, have the oldest roster in the league now, between Curry, Butler, Draymond, Porzingis, Al Horford. When we talk about the actual deals, I like the Porzingis deal. As far as the AAV, it's basically just a 1 year, $20 million contract. You've got Draymond back on basically fulfilling what his player option would be, and they could trade it as if he was still under contract last year. The Melton one, I think that's great, although I do feel like there's probably some kind of understanding that they're going to reward him next year once he has his early bird rights, which I don't really have a problem with. I think he's worth like double what he's making, that $6 million a year. The Horford one is kind of confusing, though. I'm with you there. You're like committing an additional year for his 21st year. That one puzzles me. We get into that a little more in the video. So it's just wait and see mode again. They're kicking the can down the road, but I think they're right not to trade multiple firsts to improve the roster, because they're not going to be that good. Like this team, maybe the one thing I think they probably should have done differently is maybe not bring back like one or two of these vets that were free agents, get a little younger, just because I think this team I don't think they're going to make the play-in. Like they'll be in the mix certainly, but as I look at the teams, like they'll be fighting with Portland, Utah, Phoenix. I just feel more comfortable with those teams getting it over them. Plus, the Warriors are in a huge disadvantage. No Jimmy Butler, and they're going to have more injuries with how old this team is. So, I like if they were looking to be a little better, I think they probably could have gotten some guys instead for a little cheaper. I don't have names off the top of my head, but I probably would have gone a little younger so you could have like a little more better of a product this year, because I don't even know if the players on the Warriors roster are prepared for like the potential downside for this upcoming season.
If Steph gets hurt before Jimmy comes back, if they have to go like 3 weeks without Steph in November or December, they might be looking at like a 1-9 stretch or something like that. Like they just have no shot creation. Without Jimmy, they have nobody who gets to the line or gets to the basket. Yeah, I think there is considerable downside risk here. Like if you were to ask me, Sam, who do you think a surprising relegation zone team would be? I would say the Warriors, because if Steph gets hurt early in the season and never quite recovers, if Jimmy takes longer to come back, if they make no moves, if Draymond checks out because the team is bad, like there's a lot of downside risk here. I think they'll ultimately probably settle in that like 9 to 12 range in the West, where like maybe they're a playing team if a couple of teams get hurt or disappointing or whatever. Maybe probably more likely they're out of the play-in and they're picking in that 4 to 10 range where it's the best odds. I'm totally fine with that. Like, I think
Yeah.
where we're kind of at, and I know this is disappointing, but it is what it is an extended retirement tour for Steph. And if 2027 turns out to give them a great free agent and make them substantially better, maybe we can revisit that. But that will also be Steph's, I believe, age 40 season, or at least the season in which he turns 40. He is a top 10 player when he is on the floor today. I cannot guarantee that will be the case in 6 months. I would guess that it is not the case in 18 months. I just think the reality right now is this is a rebuilding team that can't quite rebuild to the extent that it would want to. Like, the best basketball move they could make would be trading Stephen Curry. You just can't trade Stephen Curry because he's Stephen Curry. So unless he comes to you and says, I am on board with this, I want this, please send me to insert contender X, at which point I would gladly do it. Like, if he said, I want to go to the Spurs, I would have no problem whatsoever taking on De'Aaron Fox. That would be totally fine. I would send him wherever he wants.
Ultimately, they're in this spot because they did not have a very successful decade plus of drafting, especially whiffing on the 2020, 2021 picks that they had, not getting enough value there. They'd be in a far different position if they got like at least one cornerstone guy from those drafts, but they didn't. And they didn't accumulate assets. They didn't like trade veterans for additional draft picks. So they don't have extra draft picks to just trade for like even just like a decent starter to improve the roster. They're just going to be on the lookout for like another Jimmy Butler type trade. You trade one pick. But right now with lottery reform, how do you even want to trade a pick if you're the Warriors? If you're going to be in the lottery, if you're going to be within that top 16, you're going to want to keep those ping pong balls. And I kind of get the feeling like I don't think they'll be at risk of hitting the relegation zone, but I do think we'll start to see, like, if things go off the rails, like I'm anticipating, there will be some kind of like, you go on Tankathon to see like, can they keep that third lottery ball? Can you stay within that 4 through 10? That might be like the silver lining in all this, which we don't know how that's going to play out. We still haven't even gone through one lottery.
Winning at the level and for the longevity that they have, it extracts a toll. Like, you keep bringing back older guys, especially in a system like that, where it's so specific and so many guys have just not worked in that system. You spend draft picks, you can't develop guys because you don't have minutes available. Like, it's really hard to win for more than a decade. And they are now running into an issue that most teams who win as long as they have run into. The Spurs are kind of the exception. And I know they wanted to be the Spurs. They wanted to do 2 timelines. It obviously did not work out. But after, I think it's 12 years now, 12 or 13 years since that first playoff appearance where they beat Denver, like, you shouldn't expect to be good for this long. Like, I don't know what you could really expect. Like, maybe they should have been more aggressive in the past, but that's a double-edged sword, right? If they had been more aggressive in the past, maybe they would have done something stupid, right? Like, I bet a LeBron James team in 2014 would have traded Klay Thompson and Draymond Green for Kevin Love, for example. This is a double-edged sword. Steph has always been very hands-off when it comes to roster management. He has not pushed the Warriors to do stupid things in the way that LeBron has pushed his teams to be aggressive, but he has also pushed them to be stupid. It's a double-edged sword. This is how Steph has chosen to operate. And after 13 years of this, the wheels are finally coming off. And you know what? That's a trade I think every Warriors fan would have made. Trading 3 picks for Trey Murphy right now just would not be responsible. We're on the same page here. All right, we are done with the C minuses. We are now in the D range. My only D plus goes to the Sacramento Kings, who accomplished basically nothing. They waived DeMar DeRozan, who was guaranteed for $10 million. They have until soon, right, to decide if that's a stretch?
End of the month to stretch it. They save another almost $7 million doing so.
Have they ducked the tax yet?
No. So I'll just get into a little cap minutia with them because I've been trying to find Zach LaVine trades, see if there's something. I pitched you, like, what if they can trade Zach LaVine for like Jeremy Grant and D'Angelo Russell, something like that. But they're taking on a lot more long-term money. But they're only 1.3 million above the tax. They could go into the season over the tax, and if the season will shake out. They'll be in the relegation zone. They could buy out Levine later. They could find other ways to get under the tax, including stretching DeMar DeRozan's money, which would turn him into 333 over the next 3 years. So if I had to guess, I kind of get the feeling that that's what will end up happening. They'll just stretch him if they don't find any Levine deal. Yeah.
So they really didn't accomplish anything. It's kind of that simple. They did not trade Zach LaVine. They did not buy out Zach LaVine. They did not trade Domantas Sabonis. They did not trade Malik Monk. All of the veterans that we assumed would be gone as they started this rebuild are still on the team. Some of them will be here longer than others. I believe Sabonis has 2 years left.
He has another year after this at
And so it was Monk.
48.6. Monk, 21.6. But it's not a lot. They have a lot of tax flexibility for next year, so their books will get more balanced next year. But it seems like just with their free agency, I don't know if it's there like just a lack of interest in players where they committed the biannual exception to Precious Achiuwa before free agency started. There's like no one that really wants to. Does anyone else want to go there?
I mean, is there any Jonathan Kuminga interest lingering? Could they create the money? Like, I know all of the reporting has been that Zach LaVine is not going to get bought out. If Zach LaVine would give up the mid-level, you could then just turn around and spend that money on Kuminga. I guess it doesn't seem like they want to do that. Maybe getting DeAndre Hunter cooled them on that front. But I guess having Sabonis,
and Alex Caravan's there.
I guess having Sabonis is a relegation zone thing, or at least he'll raise your floor a little bit. The Kings are still very much a relegation zone candidate, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But I mean, they waited too long to start rebuilding. Getting Zach LaVine in the Fox trade was a bad decision, and now they are paying for it. I mean, I guess they probably will statistically be in that 4 to 10 range and have the best lottery odds, but they are starting from scratch. Darius Acuff is really the only high-level prospect that they have. He did not have a great summer league. I don't put too much stock into that. They're presumably just going to let him shoot as much as he wants this year. Maxime Reynaud, fine rookie season. Like Alex Caravan, Nate Clifford, like whatever. They're nice young guys to have around. They're not core pieces. There aren't really any core pieces on this team yet. And starting that sort of rebuild right as lottery reform comes really hurts. The Kings are going to be bad for the next several years at the very least. They need to overhaul basically this entire team. And they got none of it done this offseason.
Yeah, it'll be next offseason. I think they could open up cap space. And seems like they'll just close out that last roster spot with a veteran. Jake Fisher was reporting Russell Westbrook could be back, or Victor Oladipo. So overall, it's not a good offseason. I wouldn't say it's like a damaging offseason though. They didn't really add any bad money. We'll see what with Achiuwa. I'm kind of surprised he got more than the minimum, but other than that, they're just kind of trying to pass the time until all these contracts come off the books.
Yeah, so I think where we're differing is that with your worst teams, you're looking more at the worst case outcomes, and I am more thinking about like the Lakers as an example. There are a lot of very, very bad outcomes that could come out of this, but there are also some good ones. Whereas the Kings, they just kind of did nothing. So if you're going to accomplish nothing in an offseason, for me, you're probably going to get a C- or a D+.
I just think the Lakers just did multiple bad negotiations. That's why I have them as low in my book.
All right, Brooklyn Nets. I have 4 Ds, and the Brooklyn Nets are the first of them. I don't understand the Julius Randle thing at all. If you're getting Julius Randle, it's presumably as a floor raiser, but they don't have to worry about the relegation zone because they don't control their own pick. He is 32. He is overpaid. He overlaps in terms of size and position with several players on their team, most notably Michael Porter Jr. Maybe they wind up trading Michael Porter Jr. Maybe they wind up extending him. I don't want to take shots away from Mikal Brown, the number 6 overall pick. I don't want to take shots away from Igor Gemin. You do not have Julius Randle on your team to do anything but shoot. They gave those weird mutual options to Keon Ellis and to Mo Wagner. They had enough cap space where they should have just paid those guys more and made those pure team options. I don't understand that at all. They wasted a lot of cap space by doing nothing. They had a ticking clock with the execution of the Julius Randle, Nick Claxton trade that didn't take up all of their cap space, but took up most of it. If they would have acted sooner, I don't know why. Like, if you want to say they weren't interested in Peyton Watson, let's say at a big $25 million a year offer sheet, whatever, fine. I disagree, but that's a reasonable position. They couldn't have thrown an offer sheet at Spencer Jones. Like, they couldn't have found something productive to do with their money. I hate use it or lose it cap space, and they kind of lost it. Now, they're so barren that next offseason they'll presumably have cap space again, but I don't like how little was accomplished here given how tough their situation is. And the thing is, like, their overall outlook is not that bleak. If you just look at it in a vacuum and say they're a team with a bunch of young guys, a bunch of picks, and few long-term cap obligations, I'd say that's a pretty good situation for them to be in. But you can't just look at it in a vacuum. You also have to look at this as the fact that they gave away 2 years to set up a tank that kind of didn't get them a core player. We'll see how Jemin turns out to be. We'll see what Mikal Brown turns out to be. I don't know how much job security Sean Marks is going to have. If he can just play this out, I maybe feel a little bit differently than if he has pressure to win now. If win now pressure informed the Julius Randle decision, then I think that's just a bad decision. So I'm in a D with the Nets. How do you feel?
Same thing. Like, it's not good, not great, but I think it's mostly kind of like neutral, but I think there is some downside. You touched on the contract. So with Randall, you're taking him for one more year after this year. He's got that player option. I've always kind of been a little lower on Randall. You could hear like what my thoughts on him, like from the Cat trade when it happened 2 years ago. Like, I did not like that trade for the Wolves, and it did not. It was just like the downside of like what the Randall experience could be really hit the Wolves last year, to the point that it seemed like after they lost to the Spurs, they were ready to move on from him. And then the Nets kind of treat him like not a positive asset, but like a very neutral asset. Like, the trade is a little kind of astounded me. Like, you're trading Claxton for Randall, and then you're moving up 5 spots in the draft as well. I don't feel like that was enough value. I think like another team could have extracted some more stuff from the Wolves, but it sounds like they actually value Randall, because I'm trying to think who was offering him this contract that he got last year from the Wolves, 3 years, $100 million. Maybe the Nets were going to give him that contract. With the mutual option thing, it's still early to see how those things are going to pan out, but I'm just going to remind everyone, Keon Ellis, Mo Wagner, they only become free agents if both they and the Nets decide to do opt-outs. If just one side opts in, then they're in. I think it makes a lot more sense for when the Thunder gave it to Isaiah Hartenstein. He's like just a really good high-level starter that both sides are probably going to be very motivated to work something out in 2 years from now, versus having one side pick it up or the other. Where with Ellis and Wagner, like, they're fine role players. If neither player live up to the value of that contract, then like it's basically going to be a player option, and I would imagine those guys pick it up. But in the grand scheme of things, like, the Nets just don't really have that much money tied up, so it's not going to hurt them. I just don't know if these were like the players it really made sense to try this with. So overall, like, if they had a lot more money on this book, I think it'd be a lot more damaging of an offseason, but they still project to have a lot of cap space. The only thing we're waiting on to see is Michael Porter Jr. I would expect that if no renegotiation and extension is done today, which is 6 months before the trade deadline, then there won't be one done, because a renegotiation and extension will trigger a 6-month trade restriction. And I think the Nets will want to be able to trade him by the trade deadline if the right opportunity arises.
Hang on. I actually think the trade deadline is February 11th, 2027, or at least I just Googled that. I actually had to look that up earlier as I was writing something about Anthony Davis, but the basic point stands.
I don't think it's announced yet. I just know it's usually first week of February.
Usually I just Googled this.
First Thursday.
Hang on. Key dates for the 2026 NBA season. Yeah, on NBA.com. It is February 11th.
Oh, okay. So there's like a week left. All right.
Yeah, so they have a little bit of time. But the basic point stands. If they can't get to a renegotiation and extension by that date, then yeah, it does start to make more sense to trade him. I think.
Hold on. Were you? Oh yeah, I see February 11th. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Yeah. I think the appeal to them of Julius Randle, and I don't know this, I'm just speculating, is that they have had obviously a strong history of bringing in forwards at either low points in their value or as like, I don't want collateral damage to bigger moves, and brought them in and flipped them for value. Obviously, they did that with Mikal Bridges. They did that with Cam Johnson. Michael Porter Jr.'s value is much higher now than it was a year ago, and they have consistently been able to turn those guys into good value. Maybe their thought process is that they can do that for Julius Randle. He can be the guy he was with the Knicks. But if they have him for a year and he's going to be 33, and I don't think teams really value his floor raising that much, or if they do, it's more in like a free agent sense where a bad team with cap space signs him to a short-term deal, not we're going to give up first-round picks to avoid the relegation zone. I just don't really understand that, right? Like, I think there's a lot more negativity that comes with him taking shots from other players than there is upside in flipping him down the line.
Yeah. Overall, I wouldn't say they really did like much damage though. They'll be okay. I'm just still really fixated on the trade deadline being on the 11th. That's a little, they're pushing it later than than like normal. Makes some differences with like trade bonuses and stuff, but I don't think anyone cares.
Next D, the New Orleans Pelicans, who amazingly have not added a single player on a standard contract. They made a second round pick who I believe is on a two-way. They won 26 games last year, and like it's rare for me to say this because circumstances like this don't come up often. They were a fake 26 win team. They won 26 games as opposed to like some smaller number because they were the only bad team that wasn't tanking down the stretch. Like, in terms of actual quality, they might have been a 20-win team. They have not changed a single player. The only thing that they have changed is their head coach, bringing in Jamal Mosley. I don't think Jamal Mosley is a great coach, especially in a situation like this that demands offensive creativity with Zion Williamson and Derek Queen together as two offensively inclined, ball handling power forwards, let's say, big men. You need a coach who can maximize their skill sets. And based on what we saw in Orlando, I'm not convinced that Jamal Mosley is going to be that guy. If you look at any individual decision they made not to make a move this offseason, I think any of them can be explainable. We don't want to trade VMC to the Knicks. Okay, like young, defensively inclined big man in a league that values those guys more now than it did a few years ago. Okay, keep him. Makes sense. We don't want to trade Trey Murphy unless we get a haul for him. Fine, he's a good player on a good contract. He's young. I don't mind keeping him. Same with Herb Jones. Keeping Zion, well, Zion was awesome down the stretch for them last year. I understand thinking that he is a star level talent and wanting to have him in the building. When you take it as a whole, not making a single change to a fake 26-win team besides your coach is a bad offseason.
I'm with you. Obviously, they didn't do anything as destructive as the Hawks trading a future first round pick for a like end of the lottery first round pick. That like thankfully it only ended up being the 8th pick, but it could have been a lot worse if it ended up being top 4. And the big thing is they didn't move anybody, but should they have? And I think there's a big disparity between where the Pelicans think they are and where a lot of other people think they are, and that is far away from being a viable playoff team. I think they have some talented players. I also don't think it's the best mix of players put together. So you and I both think that they should trade Murphy just because right now he is finishing up that first year of that really perceived valuable contract. I don't know. Maybe they won't get quite the haul they're hoping for, but that I have to guess they're risking getting less in a future return the later they move him.
It's the OG Anunoby Pascal Siakam thing again, where they waited too long to move those guys. And they didn't get a first round pick for Anunoby, and they got bad picks mostly. I mean, well, picks that were bad at the time. One of those picks obviously turned out to be very good, but they didn't capitalize on it. They traded it, that Indiana 2026 pick. Like, I think organizationally, you kind of have to make the decision. Are we going to keep him or not? Is he part of our plan or not? And deciding whether or not Trey Murphy is part of your plan means having a plan. And I don't know what their plan is. I don't know what their long-term goal is with this group of players that frankly doesn't make sense together. There's only one really good defender on that team, Herb Jones. There's very little shooting on this team. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. And even if like the basic idea of every individual keep the player call made some sense, I have to fit every individual decision into a broader plan that I frankly don't see. I was hoping to come out of this offseason with some understanding of what the Pelicans were actually trying to accomplish, and I didn't. So I had to give them a D.
Yeah. They could still turn it around if they do decide to trade Murphy and get a nice haul for him or some of their other guys. But yeah, I think they're losing value by holding on at this point.
All right. Portland Trailblazers, my second to last D. And if I had factored in all of the ominous potential moving storm clouds, it would have been an F minus, but alas, I did not. Their offseason was fundamentally based on trading for Ja Morant. I think they would argue that there was just very little risk in trading for Ja Morant. They did not give up any draft picks to do so. It was only contracts. It was Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. I would argue that there is a lot of risk baked into that acquisition. Number one, it makes no sense based on the roster that you have. You already have a guy whose superpower is getting to the basket in Denny Avdia, who is, I believe, younger or the same age, but healthier, less of an off-court risk, less of a locker room risk, et cetera, et cetera. You don't need two guys who do that. They weaken each other by virtue of not being great at spacing the court for one another. The backcourt defense of Damian Lillard and Ja Morant is a disaster. I think they will eventually realize that those guys shouldn't start together. And Drew Holiday will eventually make his way back into the starting lineup if he's not in it in a smaller, like a small ball capacity early on. We'll see. They have marginalized their best young players in Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson. I don't really know what their long-term vision for those guys is. They obviously just extended Shaedon Sharpe last offseason. Scoot Henderson, a restricted free agent next offseason, currently extension eligible. Does not seem like there's anything on the horizon. And adding Ja Morant has added money to their books for the 2027-28 season. This matters, as we so frequently say, because Denny Avdia's contract is currently unextendable. They have to create cap space to renegotiate and extend him. They are not currently positioned to do that. That can potentially change. We'll see. But for now, they are running the very serious risk of Denny Avdia becoming a free agent in 2028, when a lot of teams could have space to try to sign him away. I've mentioned Dallas as a possibility. We will talk about that more as we get closer to it. But for now, I look at the risk of getting Ja Morant being that they made their team worse and they made it harder for them to keep their best player long-term. They did nothing to improve. They bring back Robert Williams. That contract has some injury protections, right?
Yeah, it's only $5 million guaranteed next season, non-guaranteed the last, but I think playing 50 games in each season puts it to full.
Okay, I mean that contract to me is a little bit of an overpay. I mean, he was very, very good when he was on the floor. He's just such a big risk. I guess with the non-guarantees, it's okay. Yeah. But the Ja Morant trade just made no sense to me.
So with Denny Avdia, you have two ways you can go about this. One is he's making just $11-12 million a year. How do we maximize our flexibility to build a title contender? Or shit, we can't extend him. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Maybe we should start to pay him a little early so we could get him on not just secure his future, but like maybe you can knock it down from the max, whatever the max is expected to be. I think it's going to be like $60 million a year for the 30% max when he starts. I don't think that the Ja Morant move is like enough of an upgrade with like, glass half full view where everything works out reasonably, where I don't think it's going to be like a good enough upgrade, because I just wrote about the Blazers and I'm trying to understand it a little bit more. And where I come along is, okay, they did need like another high level playmaker. They didn't quite have one. And, you can look at the Mavericks when they bought low on Kyrie Irving. That could be like the model you're hoping to accomplish that. Morant just, there was the injuries versus the off-court stuff, but also he didn't really want to be in Memphis last year, and that whatever he was like the year before, which is like maybe like a top 40 to 60-ish player that maybe he can get back to that form instead of like he was just like an outright negative last year, like like really bad, not helping the Grizzlies. If you can get to like top 30 to 40, which I think is super optimistic, then it's a success. But overall, I think I would have either tried to do something a little more aggressive with the draft picks, but now when I look around, I guess, Giannis, Kawhi, Jaylen Brown, maybe those guys didn't really want to be in Portland. So you're kind of kicking the can down the road, and you'll see it. Like if Morant works out, great. I guess the bigger question is like, what does the extension look like, which there's time for. So with that said, if they didn't really maximize the full flexibility of Avdia's small salary to like put a true championship contender around them, then you do then there is a good case that maybe they were better off just saving up cap flexibility to renegotiate his contract now, where they can do it in October. Like, what if you raise his salary to like something in the $30 million range? So, and then in the back, instead of paying 60 million in the future, maybe you could get him to like, I don't know, 40 to 45. That would be probably give you more value towards trying to build a championship contender in the future. Overall, then, like you mentioned Scoot Henderson. I guess maybe they view him as more of like a secondary creator where he can be like more like a Marcus Smart and like a Jalen Suggs, Derek White type. Maybe that's how they're viewing him. But it feels like unfair to him, especially after how well he looked in the playoffs and then the second half of last year when he came back. Maybe it kind of cruelly plays into their hand. Like it kind of helps them in negotiations, whether it's now in an extension or in restricted free agency in the future. So yeah, I would probably have them like in the upper tier of this list. Because
I would very much say because
like they didn't like. I like that they still like kept all their draft picks. Like, I'll give them in fairness. Probably they couldn't. There probably wasn't anyone out there they could get that's really worthy of their draft picks based on how the trade market shook out.
Yeah, I would be trying to trade for Scoot Henderson. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. Like, if I was a smart team like Boston, I'm staring daggers at, like, you've got this pick surplus, go get a young, talented guard. He fits the way that you want to play. Go get him. Anyway, yeah, I think you said it well. Like, they didn't take advantage of Deni Avdia's low cap figure to put a championship contender around him. Right? You had to do one of two things this offseason. You either had to get so much better that he would be on board with the idea of waiting an extra year because, like, oh, you're using this extra money to give me a real chance to win a championship? Okay, maybe then I'm okay not renegotiating and extending next summer. Or you have to set yourself up to renegotiate and extend, which they obviously didn't. Like, it's still so far out that we can't say anything with any confidence. But as I look at it, like, they had the worst possible offseason they could have had as far as Deni Avdija still being on the team 2 years from now. Like, this is the sort of offseason that had to happen to start to make Deni Avdija rumors start to go, right? Like, if they're, I don't want to say a bad team, there's enough talent on this group that, like, they'll be in the play-in mix regardless. But, like, if they're a 37-win team that's clunky and he and Ja don't fit together and the defense isn't as good and he doesn't get as many shots, he's probably not going to be super eager not to renegotiate and extend next offseason. You either had to make the team more desirable for him or you had to position yourself to pay him, and they did neither. All right. That covers Portland. We are down to the last team for me, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who get the final D of any of all of these teams. I did not give out any Fs. They lose.
They're your 30th ranked?
Wade. Well, I didn't really rank. I just did grades. So the 4 Ds are the teams that I had at the bottom. They lose Keon Ellis and Dean Wade. They do not really replace them. They get Mario Hezonja for the minimum. They are reportedly in the mix for Jonathan Kuminga. I am not a fan of Jonathan Kuminga on this team. Jonathan Kuminga should be on a team that would let him take 15 aimless shots a game. Betting on him as like your big perimeter addition, the wing that you've been looking for forever to be your defensive stopper, I don't think really makes sense. I am a big fan of Jalen Tyson. I think Jalen Tyson in a bigger role makes a lot of sense. I don't think Jalen Tyson is what this specific group needs right now. James Harden is still out there. I presume they will re-sign him after figuring out how they use the remainder of their flexibility. TBD on that front. They banked a lot of this offseason on getting LeBron for the minimum or the mid-level or some below market contract. They don't ultimately get him. And now I look at the Cavaliers as probably a play-in team in the East. They signed Donovan Mitchell to what I believe to be a regrettable contract, 4 years, $273 million. They could have gone all in on the present by trading Evan Mobley for Giannis. They did not do that. I know Giannis, I guess, had not told them he was willing to extend. I maybe would have taken the plunge if I were all in on the present. That might have gotten you LeBron. You could have gone all in on the future by trading Donovan Mitchell instead of giving him that extension. They did not do that. They now are kind of just piddling along as a average Eastern Conference team without much upside. They made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I do not view that as something they are going to repeat.
Yeah, I did not come out of watching their playoff run feeling like they made some big improvement. I think they're kind of more or less still the same strength of team they've been since, I guess, 3 years ago when they first got eliminated by the Knicks. A little bit better. I'm just not. I'm just very underwhelmed with this roster. As we look and see like who's gonna make it out to the playoffs. Right now, I kind of feel like they're in the play-in mix. That might sound controversial, but I don't. Again, like when I say that about almost every team. I'm saying that about the Sixers. I'm saying that about like I don't think anyone's really differentiating themselves right now, other than the Knicks. And I guess the Pistons, I just still believe in them, even though they still have a lot of holes to fix. I don't think the Cavs like really have earned like that guarantee that they're going to be in the playoffs. So I just feel like we kind of saw the peak of what this is. I don't think getting LeBron necessarily was going to help way too much. And it seems like they're still going to try though. They still got Evan Mobley. They gave Donovan Mitchell this contract, which we don't feel too great about. And it's still very incomplete. Feels like they're going to do something with at least one of Schroeder or Max Strus, open up some flexibility for like another move, whether that's Peyton Watson or Jonathan Kuminga. I'd be surprised to get Peyton Watson. We both expect him to return to Denver. Jonathan Kuminga wouldn't move me. So
would Peyton Watson even be that great an addition for them?
Yeah.
Well, like, can we just talk that out? Like,
sure.
Say they get Peyton Watson. I don't know how they would do it, but say they get Peyton Watson.
Jared Allen.
You would trade Jared Allen to do that?
I think if I'm Denver, I don't necessarily want Jared Allen, but I'm gonna want something at the value of a Jared Allen, like a draft equity wise.
Okay, so then you're moving Evan Mobley to center, and you're going to be a terrible rebounding team, and Mobley is going to be presumably out of position. Like, we've been tinkering with the Evan Mobley at center stuff for a long time, and there's a reason Cleveland has never committed to that. It seems that they just don't think he can really do that. Like, in the playoffs, I think it was in the first round. I don't know if they did it in the second. Maybe they did it once or twice in the second round. But, like, when they were playing Thomas Bryant playoff minutes next to Evan Mobley, that felt very indicative of something to me. Like, that felt like the Cavs saying, we just don't think Evan Mobley can be a center. But even if they got Peyton Watson without giving up Jared Allen, it's like, okay, Peyton Watson, I think that helps your defense. It makes you more athletic, which you badly need. But you also then have 3 guys who are shaky to non-shooters in your starting lineup. Like, that's the core problem that this Cavs team has. If you're going to play those 2 bigs together, you're probably going to have to play all offense everywhere else. And if you play all offense everywhere else, your defense isn't going to be good because you don't have anybody you can defend on the perimeter. If you get a perimeter defender, you're not going to have enough spacing because you have those 2 guys at center and power forward who are not good enough shooters. Donovan Mitchell is a point guard sized scorer who does not play point guard on offense or defend point guards on defense. Like, that puts you in such a roster building bind. They have for so long needed to shake this up. If there was a window where this team was going to work, it was probably the 24-25 season when they won 64 games and they had all this extra depth, and Ty Jerome was great off the bench and Darius Garland was healthy, but unfortunately they got hurt in the playoffs and we never quite got to see what this team could be. Now they kind of feel like the ghost of that team where all of the depth is gone and the guys are older and everything's a little bit more stale. I don't know, man. I don't know what the plan here is. I don't know what a good version of the next 2 years is for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I have faith in this organization. I think it's a good front office. We'll get to them in front office rankings, obviously. but I am just a little confused at like what they think is about to happen.
And they still need to re-sign James Harden. I can't, whatever contract they give him, I don't know how to evaluate that, just because it seems like whatever they do, it's going to be kind of baked into trading him for him in the first place. And you and I were both pretty against that trade, but that's like a trade deadline evaluation. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems like they're gonna just continue along, try to play as well as they can, and just keep trying. I'm curious to know like how they view this team, like, and if they still feel like this team has like championship upside, because I think that ship sailed, as you said, 2 years ago. Like that was like really the time to know 25 season if this team can make the, at least like they had to make the finals at least. Like, they had a good chance then.
Yeah, I think the offseason that they had just suggests that they are higher on this core than we are. Because if you extend Donovan Mitchell, that suggests that, and they even said this, I think Kobe Altman said it on the record, that Donovan Mitchell can be the best player on a championship team. I no longer agree with that. Not trading Evan Mobley for Giannis suggests that you think Evan Mobley is like a long-term franchise player. I have been on board with that for the most part. I think he was that guy in 24-25. Was not that guy to the same extent last season. Maybe he's peaked. We don't quite know. He's making 30% of the cap. You don't get value on his contract anymore. I think they're just higher on this group of players than I am. And maybe they need a play-in year to kind of awaken them to that fact and force them to make some changes. But
Yeah.
all right, I think that concludes our offseason grades for all 30 teams. Yossi, what are you working on? What do you want to plug?
Just subscribe to Third Apron, the Substack. Wrote about the Blazers, wrote about the Warriors. Subscribe if you're new here to the podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Got offseason reviews with guests coming up. Did the Celtics, got Sixers and Warriors in the pipeline. And just follow us on Twitter at our names, Yossi Goslin, Sam Quinn CBS, for all sorts of good content there as well.
I'm not letting you end this podcast without plugging CBS Sports. Read CBS Sports, watch CBS Sports HQ. I'm doing a job here, guys. Come on. All right. Now, I'm going to be the last one who speaks. If I'm hosting these episodes, I deserve the right to close them as I see fit. So have a good afternoon. It's actually 7:11 p.m. on the East Coast right now. Have a good evening if you're watching on stream. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, have a good whatever time of day it is.